Welcome to Talent Freaks with Andy Coon. I'm Andy, a filmmaker and photographer based in the Bay Area of California. This podcast delves into the journeys of creative individuals who inspire curiosity and impact through their work. In this episode, we're diving into a conversation from 2007 with Michael Bentt, the former WBO heavyweight champion of the world. Michael's journey from the boxing ring to Hollywood is nothing short of inspiring. As an actor and producer, he's worked on major productions like Ali and $1 Million Baby. This is part one of a two-part series where we explore his transition from boxing to acting, his personal challenges, and his insights into the world of sports and entertainment. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and rate Talent Freaks on your favorite podcast platform. It helps others discover these inspiring stories, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. So let's go back to 2007 and let the younger, more eager, and friendlier version of myself introduce you to the former WBO heavyweight champion of the world, Michael Bentt. And today, I'm very lucky. I had a discussion with Michael Bentt, the former WBO heavyweight champion of the world. He's also an actor, been in Ali. He has worked in many Hollywood productions for stunt coordinator for $1 Million Baby, and now he's producing and making his way through Hollywood. Man, I am excited about this interview, and this is going to be a two-part series because we had so much to talk about. So, here we go. First off, I'd like to thank Michael Bentt for joining me.
Uh-oh. Wait, Andy.
Sure, no problem.
That's my son, man. He's making some noise in the background there, man. So bear with him. Wait, Bubba. Wait. Oh, oh boy.
How old is your son now?
He's like 2 years and 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time's going by quick, isn't it, Mike?
Oh my God, man. Yeah, it's an amazing process, man. Challenging in every way imaginable, but it's also like hugely gratifying.
Oh yeah.
You know, I have a little man duty tonight, but he'll be cool. He'll be cool.
And like I said, it's very informal, so it's okay. You know.
Okay.
Having him
good.
screaming in the background is perfectly fine, especially for what I do.
Okay, cool.
Because sometimes my wife will come in and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like,
"Well, Andy, you're married, man."
Yeah, I'm married.
I didn't know that. Andy Coon? How long are you married?
Oh my God, we're about to hit 4 years.
Come on, are you serious, man?
Yeah. Finally.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you. And
any children?
No kids yet, and we're holding off. You know.
Okay. I do understand, man. I do understand. Wow, man. I had no idea you were married. Now, is your wife from that part of the country as well, or she?
Yes. She's from Greensboro, North Carolina, or she's right outside Greensboro, North Carolina. But
okay, got you.
The funny story about this is she was actually my manager at Pie Works, where I used to deliver pizzas.
Come on.
And
wow.
we were just friends back then, but we just maintained a really good friendship throughout the years. She always had boyfriends, so it worked out perfect.
That's what love is, man. Love is when friendships catch a fire, man.
Yeah.
That's what they say anyway.
Well, see, I caught her at the right time, too. I was in the best shape of my life.
I mean, physically?
Yeah, physically. No, both, actually.
Isn't that weird? How we're all attracted to people who look good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? On the outside, but ultimately, it doesn't mean anything. Because you can look like a Adonis member, be a fucked up cat inside. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Be be a freaking Ed Gein, man. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. And, But you know what? I ballooned. I'll be totally honest. I gained weight. I went up to about 267. And
wait, whoa, Andy. And when you met her, what were you?
215.
Well, that's a compliment to her cooking. I'm
no,
sure.
It's not. It's a compliment to my laziness and letting time slide. But I will tell you this, though, my friend, that this past month I've lost 21 pounds. I'm down to
Good for you.
246.
How'd you do it?
I'm eating right finally, and I'm also working out. So
good for you, man.
It helps, and I know you are crazy, at crazy shape.
Well. I wasn't, I'm not in Barry Bonds type shape, you know what I mean?
Who is besides him?
But yeah, I'm in pretty good shape. This town being like, a very visual town, and very almost to the point where it's superficial in terms of your looks. What they see first, being an actor is like, how you come across physically. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I can be the best actor in the world, but if my presentation physically doesn't say it, it don't mean shit.
True.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, tell me about when you went in for the part for Sonny Liston, and you and I both have a friend in common, Jessica Nofo, who gave you some pointers.
That's right. I mean, that's my partner right there, man. She's like, she was really the just as like, I guess I would call her like, my catalyst, man.
Yeah.
She's my, like my point guard, my leadoff man.
I hear you.
Leadoff woman. You know what I mean? She engineered the whole Ali experience for me. She put me on tape. She would she would encourage me to contact the people involved in the film. When I thought like, I didn't have a chance. She said, Mike, no, do it, man. Like, no one else can play this role but you.
Nice.
And she encouraged me big time. And after about, I guess a 3 or 4 month period, like, I finally got a phone call back from the production office.
Mm-hmm.
And just aside from Fred Berner, who Fred is the one of the producers on Law and Order. And I was training his son, Michael, at the time. And I asked Fred if he knew anyone, in the film world out in California that could maybe, put in a good word for me with Michael Mann.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, sure. And he called Ron Shelton. Fred and Ron had did a film together called White Man Can't Jump. I'm sorry. No. They did a film together called Oh Baby. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, Mama. Come on, man. I just made ambush on my son.
Yeah.
Ron and Fred did a film together. Wait, Mama, wait. I'm talking on the phone, man. Ron and Fred did a film together called The Great White Hype.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And Fred reaches out to Ron Shelton for me, and Ron made a phone call to the casting director of Ali, Vicki Thomas. Vicki Thomas was the casting director on White Men Can't Jump, and I think, and also the baseball thing. I'm sorry.
What, Major League or?
I think Bull Durham as well.
Oh, wow.
I could be mistaken though, but Vicki was very instrumental in casting a few of Ron's projects, and Ron contacted her on my behalf and said, "Look, the next time if you're ever out in LA, Mike, contact Vicki Thomas, and we'll get the ball rolling."
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I was out in Las Vegas taking the Las Vegas police test, and I had
you were
taken
thinking
the physical.
You're going to become a cop?
I sure was. Man. I was I took the written exam, passed it. I was online to go into the academy, and I took a bus ride from Vegas to L.A. And I knocked on. I made a phone call to the Ali casting department, and they saw me based on Ron's recommendation, and they gave me a script to read.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, Mike, nice job. Don't call us, we'll call you. So I'm heading back to Las Vegas, man, with my tail between my legs, and already to be already to join the Las Vegas PD, man. And I get a phone call. Well, I'm actually going back to New York from Vegas to pack the rest of my stuff and move out to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So on the flight back to New York from Vegas, I get a phone call, as I landed JFK. It says, Michael Mann's office. We want to see you at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Damn.
I'm like, guys, seriously? I'm like, I just landed in New York. I was flat broke, had no money. I had a very, very dear friend of mine, John Turco. John loaned me some money, and I got a chance to go out to L.A. John Turco and Audie Curry from HBO Sports, man. Like these guys, like loaned me some money, and I was able to buy plane tickets and a hotel fare, back to L.A. And then I met with Michael Mann, and he cast me as Sonny Liston, and it changed my life completely.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, that was a huge role.
Oh my God, man! Oh my God! And it was kind of like it was really terrifying because, I know how to be a fighter. You know what I mean? But how do you go from the world of fighting? And I had retired maybe 3 or 4 years prior to that. How do you go from the world of fighting to the world of acting like a fighter, being hurt, and being humiliated? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I had to plug in all of my past experiences, as a fighter, being hurt and being humiliated. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, didn't even think
Does
about
that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So and it was ultimately for me it was almost cathartic.
Yeah.
I got a chance to purge a lot of my demons and also confront a lot of my apprehensions and fears.
Well, could you talk about what were some of your demons that you?
Oh wow! Well, fighters. No one. I was just reading a quote by William H. Macy, and he said something that applies to boxers. He said that no one acts because they had a happy childhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the same is true for boxers. No one boxes because they have this great childhood, man. And I think ultimately people box to either exercise some kind of demon or bring those demons closer to them, or get some kind of validation from people,
right,
or a person. And I had a lot of that going on.
Wow.
Why you boxed, my self-worth was tied up in boxing.
Yeah.
A boxer's self-worth is tied into how well he gets up for being knocked down to knocking somebody out.
Right.
And so I had those things to contend with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And plus I had. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Plus I had this this $20 million this media star who for the most part didn't have a clue. You know what I mean about the journey that he's about to go on. And Michael Mann, if you know Michael Mann, commands authenticity.
Yeah.
He could have gotten Ving Rhames play Sonny Liston. But as brilliant as an actor that Ving is, he would have to train Ving Rhames for a year,
right,
if not 2 years, to get the nuances that were Sonny Liston down. You know what I mean? Or
yeah.
to or get Ving to register a fighter's DNA. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because he would have to train. He would have to become
a
fighter.
God,
he would have to do all that just to portray.
That's right.
Sonny Liston.
Exactly.
So.
And there's one thing of playing a guy from the emotional place that Sonny came from. You know what I mean? He's a guy who couldn't read and write. You know what I mean? So you know where he's coming from. He's damaged goods and he's very defensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He comes off as a thug. But all that thug exterior, it's like saying look, I don't want you to know because I don't want you to know that I can't fucking read and write. You know what I mean?
So, did you do research on him before the whole part?
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh sure. Yeah. Enormous research. Absolutely, yeah.
What was like the most interesting thing that you found out about Sonny?
Um, the thing I found out that really connected with me was that he couldn't read and write.
Hmm.
You know,
But
I really, and I really understood that because my father can't read or write.
okay,
You know what I mean? And my father is very defensive. And very big and very he's a bold, bigger than life figure.
right.
And Sonny was a bold, bigger than life figure, and and then when I read that he couldn't read and write, I said, "Oh, I know this guy.
Huh, that's interesting.
I know him intimately. I knew why he got pissed off at this young punk Cassius Clay, who was disrespecting him.
Yeah.
I know that because people who have something to protect and who feel inferior, that's a hell of a conflict there, man.
But also, as a fighter yourself, I mean, you can also understand how he felt by having someone like Ali chastise him and calling him names.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm sure that would drive anyone, outrageous.
Sure. But I think it was compounded by the fact that, Sonny not being able to read or write, and Cassius knowing this,
right?
And poking fun at him, not overtly, but subtly,
right?
There was I had a box of tapes that I would watch, for just little nuances, and there was a press conference that announced the fight between Cassius Clay and well, actually it was Cassius X then, and Liston, and during the press conference, they gave a paper, like a mock signature, just for the a symbolic gesture of signing a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And Cassius signed it, and he shuts it over to Liston. You know what I mean? Knowing that the man can't read or write.
Oh, yeah.
Like, wow, fuck me, man.
Damn.
Yeah. Damn is right. But unfortunately, the film was called Ali.
Exactly.
Not Sonny Liston. I mean that being said, man, there's a bunch of juicy stuff there, for a Sonny Liston feature film.
Yeah, well, that's almost the case for almost every fighter that he fought. I mean, he had these epic battles against everyone, and just especially when he first got the title. I mean, that.
Yeah.
You could do. It was a really good movie, and man, I mean, you blew me away. I was like, hell yeah, Mike, that's awesome. I was so happy to see you in that role. It was great.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about your amateur career because I didn't realize this until I went into Wikipedia. And do you know you have that you are on Wikipedia?
What's Wikipedia? What
Wikipedia is like the online free encyclopedia.
Okay.
And it has your amateur career, professional career, after boxing, and it has some links to some articles about you.
What's the web address?
It's if you go to let's see, wikipedia.org.
Okay.
And then just type in your name, you'll find it.
Okay. I'll have to check it out. Is the information accurate? Well, I'll find out.
Yeah, you will. I guess you will.
What I mean?
But I mean, it sounds pretty accurate because I heard about it talks about your Golden Gloves that you won 4 New York City Golden Gloves,
right.
And 5 U.S. amateur boxing championships.
Yeah.
That's impressive. And it says both accomplishments remain unequaled.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing that sticks out here is it said that in the 86 World Boxing Amateur Championships, you were placed a controversial second in the U.S. Olympic trials, in which Ray Mercer became the Olympic gold medalist.
Right. That was the 88 trials.
Oh, okay.
Ray beat me in the 88 Olympic trials in Concord, California, and it was controversial for 2 reasons. One, when a guy wins 5 national championships, even if it's he gets like knocked down 4 times in a fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gets the nod. You know what I mean? There have been countless cases of people who have been amateur boxing standouts prior to the Olympic year, and then gaining a berth on the Olympic team, just by virtue of them being premier athletes, prior to the Olympic trials. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's a walk-on, if you have these impressive credentials, but it helps.
Oh, obviously, yeah.
And for Ray to beat me, during the Olympic year, it was a huge upset.
Wow.
Hence the controversy.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
A lot of sports writers from around the nation felt that it was politics. You know what I mean? At that time, the USA Boxing Association, the president was Colonel Don Hall, who was a colonel from the Army. So and boxing is always business. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now was it set up to where they wanted every Olympic slot filled by an Army fighter? No, but I got the feeling that that you would have to kill an Army guy to make the team that year.
Gotcha.
And if it was close, the Army guy gets it because the influences are with the higher ups.
You know what's interesting here? It also says that in '88 that you were going to go to the Jamaican Olympic trials.
Yeah.
And
actually, yeah.
What did they ask you to do in order to become part of the team?
I actually took part in after I lost to Ray about a week or two later. We made some arrangements to fight and compete in the Jamaican Olympic trials.
That's because your mom and dad are both Jamaican
citizens.
That's
right, exactly right. That's right. And I went over there and I had 2 fights, and I stopped both of their top fighters in my weight class. And I thought, I had gained a berth on the Jamaican Olympic team. And about a day or two before leaving to go to Kingston, I was supposed to provide my own plane fare to Kingston. Okay, fine.
Right.
After about a day or two before departing for Kingston, I get a phone call saying I would have to relinquish my U.S. citizenship.
Oh.
But they would make some provisions if my father, would sponsor, the rest of the team. I'm like, look, that's that seems like
that's a bit too much, I think.
Yeah. So I'm like, what, man? No. What?
You're like, I just beat your best fighters, and you're going to ask me to do
Exactly. They were trying to hustle my father. You know what I mean?
Right.
My dad had recently won, the lottery in New York. And it was kind of like big news. So they thought he had this groundswell of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, what, man? I don't. What? I'll pass.
You're like, you could bring home a potential gold medal to the Jamaican team, and they're trying to get you to do that. That's ridiculous.
That's right. Asinine, man.
Yeah.
Idiotic. And and then the reason I could have, looking back now, Andy, I could have said, what, Dad, why don't you flip the bull for him, you know what I mean, and I'll go, But the relationship I had with my father at the time, even now, wasn't such that I didn't want this man my father, to hold anything over me, you know what I mean?
And you know what? You did the right thing. I mean,
yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And I'm sure your father has huge respect for you for not asking that. I mean, because that's kind of
what. If he does, Andy, he doesn't say. You know what I mean?
Okay, I got you.
It's like that, man.
Quiet types.
Yeah, But I learned a very, very valuable life lesson, though. Always adhere to your integrity. You know what I mean? A little voice was saying, Mike, don't do it. Don't do it.
You know what? I hear that voice. I hear that voice all the time, Mike. I hear that voice all the time, and sometimes I don't listen to it, and I end up in the worst situations. And it's
And
not really integrity. It's more of like instinct for me.
yeah, right, yeah,
And
yeah,
I realized I'm
yeah.
like, that was stupid.
That's right.
Like
That's
when I
right.
got
That's
lost in
right.
Arizona, I listened. I did not listen to my
Yeah,
intuition. It
that's
just
right. That's what it is, man. And we all we all have access to it,
yes.
and it's like I call it like a little check clause. You know what I mean? I know what's right and wrong.
Right.
And if I have to question it like twice, then I'm in deep. I'm in over my head.
Right.
Because I should have made the right decision like from the onset. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And this is pretty damn cool. It said in the book Rocky Lives.
Yeah.
They say you are regarded as the most accomplished amateur boxer in the history of American amateur boxing. Never to have made the USA Olympic team.
Yeah. I mean that's unfortunately that's true.
I mean,
you know what, Andy? You know what? When you're in the midst of all that stuff, like in 1988, if you had told me that the day after I lost to Ray Mercer,
you'd be pissed.
I would have been insulted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now it's like it's quite an honor, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
They're kind of making the point that you should have been.
Yeah. When you look at it, like the list of people who were great amateurs, or who were great pros coming out of the amateurs, like those guys can't make that claim. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Tyson clan.
That's
you know
true.
What I mean? So that's and like I'm not trying to knock Mike, but like it just speaks to my dedication and hard work as an amateur fighter.
Well, as an amateur, how many fights did you actually partake, and how frequent were the fights?
Oh wow! I fought since I was 10 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and I had my record was 175.
No
and
kidding.
I lost 10 fights. Yeah. I lost 10 fights.
That's crazy, Mike.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. That's a lot of fights for a heavyweight. Of course, like when you're 10 years old, you're not like weighing like 240 pounds, but like
Right.
you're still fighting guys like who weigh what you weigh.
Right.
And you're still taking the kind of abuse that's oh boy. You're still taking okay, but wait. You're still taking like head trauma.
Right.
And abuse.
Man, that's.
I had like over 400 amateur fights.
Well, let's get into your now. What's the transition like? How do you go from amateur into professional boxing?
Well, if you have it's like you don't necessarily have to have a standout amateur background to turn pro.
Mm-hmm.
I can come out of jail, you know what I mean, or be a police officer on the force, and then think that I have some championship potential, and just go down to the commission and ask for a boxing license and be licensed. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. So
you don't have to have a background in the sport.
Okay.
I mean, it helps obviously.
Right.
But come on, Elijah.
Hey, by the way, I love your name, Elijah. That's a great name.
Yeah. Wait. I'm sorry, Andy.
Hey, you gotta take
wow. Hey, but here's the milk. That's for you. Jeez. No, but so I turned pro in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
Amid a whole bunch of acclaim, being the second the runner-up to Ray Mercer in the trials, a 5-time national champion, a 4-time Golden Gloves champion, the whole 9 yards.
Mm-hmm.
And would you believe it or not, Andy, I get knocked out in my first pro fight. Hello.
God, how do you go from like the amateur fights and just go right?
Andy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
How do you go from like the amateurs where you had 179 or all those victories to professional where you start from ground zero again? Like,
you know what? I think that a lot of people in the boxing world may dispute this, particularly the experts.
Mm-hmm.
And experts, I like to define as people who never fought.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the amateurs are much harder than the pros.
Wow.
And the reason is because in the amateurs, you can have a really, really deep well of talent, and you can't pick and choose who you fight.
Right.
But in the pros, if I sign you, Andy Coon, to a massive contract, say I give you like $75,000 to turn you pro, right? I'm going to make sure and do my homework on every guy you fight, every guy you spar in the gym. You know what I mean?
And it would be an easy victory for you.
Absolutely, sure, exactly. It's, well, supposed to be.
Right.
On paper. But Andy, every once in a while, a Jerry Jones sneak in, man.
Gotcha.
Jerry Jones was the guy I fought my first pro fight. You know what I mean? He was a guy on paper that I should have beat. But it was like Michael Bentt versus Andy Coon. And guess what, Andy? Andy Coon lands the right hand on Michael Bentt's chin.
That's my specialty.
And Michael Bentt doesn't see it. and then Michael Bentt's life is turned into purgatory, man.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you go from that, from coming from your first, professional fight? It's a loss. How difficult is that?
Talk about, Dante couldn't have described it any better, man. Purgatory,
Yeah.
pain, humiliation,
Wow.
self-doubt, clouds of people whispering,
Yeah.
even when they're not. I mean, you have to go through that. I think that any true champion goes through that, at some point in their lives. And for me, it was my first pro fight.
And from what was the distance between your first fight and then your second fight?
Oh, maybe 24 months. I took off 20 months.
Wow.
Because I was afraid. Honestly, I was afraid of facing the prospect of being, humiliated again.
Got you.
Because in boxing, you never know. You could train like a demon. You could cross your T's and dot your I's in training camp. You could have the right guy. You could have your management pick just the right opponent for you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not present, and if you don't do your homework, your psychological homework, the preparation, and it can happen in those between those ropes,
So,
and for me, Manuel Stewart was my first trainer and manager.
now, isn't he considered one of the best?
Well, he wasn't that night, man. I love Emmanuel, but that night he messed up. You know what I mean? You don't take a guy who has 5 national championships and put him in against a guy who's 6'3", is a southpaw, can switch effectively.
And you didn't know that he was a southpaw
Oh,
either?
hell no.
Oh, that's crazy.
Had no idea.
Wow.
No idea. And who learned to fight. This guy was like 4-0 when I fought him. It was Jerry Jones, and he had learned to fight. He wasn't on the amateur boxing circuit at all. He learned to fight, in jail.
Oh, God.
A la Bernard Hopkins.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Even that being said, should I have beaten him? Yeah, probably. Was it the kind of fight that if I was managing a kid who had my kind of amateur record, would I put him in against a Jerry Jones type? No.
No way. No.
No
Not
way,
for the
man.
first. Not for the first fight.
Exactly. You give a kid a few confidence builders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A few a few safe character testers. But not against a guy like Jerry Jones, who could switch he could switch from left hand to right hand in a drop of a dime, and was a great athlete. But so that was the man. He was and I think he would tell you if he had one thing that he could do over, he'd probably say, well, that's high on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Because that really at the end it ruined my life. At the end it killed me.
Well,
you know.
Well, you did a pretty good turnaround from that. You went and did 10 straight defeat. I mean, you just whooped everyone's tail, and then you got up into. How did you land Tommy Morrison? How did you land that fight?
You know what? There was a sports writer by the name of Michael Katz,
mm-hmm.
who was one of the chief, one of the most pivotal and connected sports writers in the boxing world in the 80s and 90s. And Michael Katz was having a conversation with Bill Caton. Bill Caton was then the manager of Tommy Morrison.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, what's wrong, Baba? What's wrong? I'm just calling back, man. And they were having a conversation. They had a date to fill for a boxing match.
Okay.
Morrison had agreed to fight Lennox Lewis for like $8.5 million, and he was going to do like a tune-up fight, to build some interest in his fight against Lewis.
Gotcha.
And they need someone safe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Someone with a name. It's not a big pro name. Someone who was credible, and I was credible. I had 10 pro fights, which was nothing. I got knocked out in my first pro fight by a guy named Jerry Jones. And if I'm Bill Caton, I'll take the fight.
Oh yeah. I mean, what was Tommy's record at the time?
You know what though? I'm sorry?
What was Tommy's record at the time?
Tommy had just beaten George Foreman. He was like 36-1.
And he
33 knockouts.
And he just got the heavyweight championship.
That's right. He just beat George for the WBO championship. Yeah? And but on paper, if you're Bill Caton, you take that fight, right?
Yeah.
But Bill Caton didn't want that fight.
Oh, he didn't?
No, he didn't, because Bill Caton, he's a New York guy.
Gotcha. So he knew about your rep and.
Yeah, exactly. But Tommy though wanted to fight because as an amateur, I outshadowed all these guys as amateurs. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Ray snuck by me in the trials. It's debatable, whether they beat me or not. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But he did beat me. He was a great gold medalist. I mean, I don't think during '88, no one beats Ray in the '88 games at 201. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even if I fought for Jamaica, he was on a roll. You know what I mean? He peaked perfectly.
And he he could take a punch better than I've ever seen anybody. Oh my God!
Yeah, that's right. I would have had to fight the perfect fight to beat Ray. Had I got to Seoul. But that being said, I overshadowed guys like Tommy Morrison and Ray for much of their amateur careers, and I guess Tommy has something to prove to himself against me.
Wow!
So he took the fight.
So
it was his call.
So you hear this
call.
When you hear this,
Sorry?
when you hear him, or when you hear that Tommy wants to fight. Did you start just licking your lips and be like, all right, this is my shot?
No, not at all, because when a fighter gets knocked out, like I got knocked out, there's still enormous amounts of self-doubt.
Got you.
Now, no fighter would ever tell you this.
Oh.
But thankfully, I'm not fighting anymore, so I can afford to say it. You know what I mean? But fighters, man, are wrapped with self-doubt.
That's really interesting. I mean, that kind of makes sense. Also, with professional models and actors. I mean,
come on, man. Yeah.
It goes. You guys are human.
Yeah, exactly. And the greatest fighter of our era. Ali. I don't know if he's done enough introspection of himself to admit it now, but a guy who talks that much trash, has to be like, just brimming with like self-doubt, man.
Yeah. No, you're
You know
absolutely
what I mean?
right.
So that being said, I was, I knew that if I tapped into like, all the ugly shit that I was exposed to, if I tapped into like, all the dark stuff that I can tap into, I could beat Tommy.
Well, you did it lightning fast. I mean, 97
Yeah.
seconds. Good Lord, man. I mean, what were you thinking when that bell rang?
But Andy, that wasn't my design.
Oh,
You know
I
what I
know.
mean? Like, it was like, it was like, I was prepared to box Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Be the matador to his bull.
Gotcha.
But like, the ring was since he was champion, like, he had control over like, the size of the ring, the kind of gloves we used,
Oh, I didn't realize you could do
and
that.
it benefits him to have a smaller ring against me, because he's the bigger bomber.
Gotcha. He's
know.
more of a toe-to-toe kind of boxer.
That's right, exactly. He's Dave Kingman to my to my Bucky Dent.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On paper.
Got you.
But the one thing that I always had, as an amateur, was hand speed. And in boxing, hand speed is punching power. When you weigh like 226 pounds, like I weighed that night, you can't deny the fact that if I put my hand on you, it's gonna have an adverse effect.
Yeah.
And the fact that Tommy, maybe he was looking ahead to Lewis, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was still caught up in the allure of beating the huge celebrity George Foreman, but that's not my concern.
Right.
A fighter's job is like being a policeman, you know what I mean? When you're on the street, you have to be aware of your surroundings and be ready to pull the trigger.
Wow.
Bottom line,
Well, you definitely pulled the trigger.
yeah. That was a good night for me. That was a good night for me.
How did it feel to be the champion, WBO World Heavyweight Champion?
You know what, Andy? It was anticlimactic, and it was about 10 minutes later, I'm in the dressing room. No, it was like 20 minutes later. After I get interviewed by Larry Merchant, and he gives me this whole spiel about were you really hurt? Yeah, I was hurt, man. It's the hurt business. Of course, I was hurt.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm in the dressing room, and I'm looking at all these people in my locker room. I'm like, this is some real bullshit.
Wow.
I just didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's maybe that's my psychosocial makeup. You know what I mean?
Well, you're pretty deep, Mike. I mean,
well, I don't know if I'm deep. I'm just I just took it at face value. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything.
You're right, and people start latch. I don't know because I haven't won anything, but people would start latching onto you, and then you have this.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, all
exactly.
these people are in your corner, and you're like, where do they come
Right, exactly. I'm like, no. If I had lost, would all these people be here?
from? Right.
And I got almost got resentful. Not that I had won the championship. It was I'm very proud of my belt, man. I have it under my bed right now. You know what I mean? I'm very proud of the accomplishment.
That is great.
That took me 18 years of blood, sweat, and tears. When I mean tears, I mean tears.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll get you some more milk. Okay, come. That's the one thing though that was probably that's to my detriment, Andy. Being as when you think a lot as a fighter, man, it's probably not the best thing for you. Emmanuel Stewart once said he went to the interview with Michael Katz from the Daily News and said that if Michael Bentt goes into a movie theater, and watches a sad movie, he'll start to cry. I'm thinking, motherfucker, I'm a human being.
Yeah,
What,
no kidding.
I shouldn't cry?
Yeah, I mean, you have human emotions.
Exactly. But for a fighter,
You can't show that side.
It goes contrary to to the culture of fighting.
Right.
Shelley Finkel. You know who Shelley Finkel is?
I've heard that name.
Shelley is one of the most powerful guys in the boxing game. Like he's managed Mark Breland, Tyson, Holyfield. He's a former concert promoter.
Okay.
And he used to groom me at one point. You know what I mean? He used to he used to have aspirations of managing me. And after that didn't work out, he made a statement to Mike Katz, also in the Daily News, that Michael Bentt thinks too much. I'm like, well, damn. I mean, wow. I mean, see. I mean, the boxing culture is surrounded by, the boxing culture is permeated by people who don't want fighters to think, and fighters who are afraid of thinking.
Right.
I
could see why they would think that, but I don't agree why they.
Yeah.
Because you also have that with football players too. I mean, you have almost any coach if they could clear everyone's mind and just get them to do what they tell them to do.
Wow. That's. I mean, that's I don't get that. I don't get that.
I don't either.
Because true creativity, hey, Baba, true creativity, man, whether it's throwing the right hand, whether it's throwing a football, whether it's writing a book. I mean, you can't put a damper on that.
No.
No. But maybe, and maybe I wasn't meant to be a boxer at all. I don't think I was.
No. You did a hell of a job when you were there. I mean, if you weren't meant to be a boxer, I mean, you sure did achieve a lot when you were there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man.
I'd like to thank Mike Bentt once again for doing this interview. And I know it was kind of rough with his kid in the background, but I have absolutely no problem with that, Mike. You're a father, you're a gentleman, and you're one hell of a friend. And thanks again for listening to this episode of Talent Freaks. Michael's story is a testament to resilience and reinvention. From his days as a heavyweight champion to his successful career in Hollywood, Michael continues to inspire with his dedication and passion. Be sure to check out part 2 of our conversation with Michael, where we delve deeper into his experiences in the entertainment industry and his future projects. If you'd like to get to know my work, visit talentfreaks.com to see some of the videos that I've worked on, as well as the photography that I'm currently doing and so much in love with. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast. It truly helps others discover these incredible stories. Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and stay curious.